So I noticed that my glasses were causing terrible reflections, so I will do away with them. Um, I really could keep talking about that stuff in my childhood. It was so crazy and there's so much that happened, but I glanced over all of it in order to make it fit in there, and it barely did. And I only barely got to say some of the stuff I had to say. But on to the next part, which is my early adulthood. So I went to college straight out of high school for about a year and a half. During the first year, actually, um, I had several friends that I made, with people in the dorm after a while, um, and we would do all sorts of crazy things together. Um, that lasted for 6 or 7 months before it kind of fizzled, and we all went our separate ways. During this time, I also had a couple of girlfriends and one boyfriend. Um, the first girlfriend that lasted about a week. The boyfriend lasted like 2 weeks. Didn't really work all that well, but I kind of wished it would because guys hit me all the freaking time. But alas, it was not meant to be. Um, the third girlfriend lasted, 3, maybe even 4 weeks, um, before that one ended as well. And I have to say that, you know, both of those girls complained about the fact that, I didn't know what I want, that I didn't take what I wanted, that I didn't, wear the pants in a relationship and, be dominant and go and do things with them and initiate stuff and all this other things. And it really reinforced, even, you could say in a way that I was lucky to have actually, had intimate relations with people, and in a way that I was, but it did really reinforce in my mind that there were no women in the world that were, that would like me. That I was not the kind of guy that was likable. I didn't have any of the traits that girls look for. Um, it very much reinforced, that view. Um, so anyway, all this happened within that first year. By the second year, all that was done with. Those friends that I hung out with were all kind of doing their own separate things. We didn't hang out anymore. I didn't have any other friends. It was. I have to say that even before that, I do have lots of memories of being terribly lonely and spending a lot of time alone, even with all that other stuff, relatively speaking, going on. I spent a lot of time alone and wishing that I wasn't. Um, and by that second year, it was even worse. Um, at school, there were, that Ohio University at that time required public speaking, and that's a class that I had failed twice. Um, it was awful. I couldn't do it. Um, I really dreaded classes where you had to interact with people and you had to like group projects of any kind, or if they had to get up in front of people. I had a hard time with that stuff, and I didn't do well in classes where participation was important. I simply was unable to do it. Um, anyway, somewhere in that second year, I just got up one day. I didn't even know what I wanted to do there. I didn't know what I was doing. I switched majors several times and was in philosophy, and I was starting to think that that was a pretty stupid major as well. Um, I just didn't know what I wanted. And so one day I just got up and I left. I walked out when I was done. And between that and say the age of 24, I moved, you know, every 6 months at the most. I moved all over the country. I have seen most of the United States and a good deal of Canada and Alaska. I traveled around all over the place. I had at least 7 or 8 different jobs. Always, looking to someplace else that would, you know, be better than where I was right now. Always trying to find something else, and I was very alone during this time. I didn't have any friends during this time at all. I really didn't. Um, I just moved from place to place, and you know, was very, very poor and very, very skinny, and there's so much that happened, but I have to, glance over it and, get to the next more important kind of stuff. I forgot to look at the time when it started. I think. Okay. Anyway, when I was about 24, I had moved to Toledo, Ohio. Um, and I had a job in a warehouse in second shift, which suited me pretty well because basically I was on this particular, I had this particular job where I didn't have to interact with anybody. I had my own job to do all night, long, and I'd go off and I would just do it. And it was second shift, which meant that I could I was happy that I was able to go grocery shopping at 3 in the morning when there was nobody else there practically. It was very, very quiet, and I was happy about that. Um, I was super excruciatingly lonely and alone during this time. Um, and it was during this time that I really realized that, there was nowhere that I was going to move to, that was going to fix it, that the problems were in me. And I really started to look at other people more so than before and be like, what the hell is wrong with me? I would see everybody around me, it seemed anyway. They all had friendships, they all had, relationships, they all hung out with people, they all talked with each other, they laughed, they did all these things, and it's like, what the hell was wrong with me? I really honestly felt like the biggest freak in the world. I know it's kind of a cliche, it seems like everybody thinks that, I suppose, but, I really did think that, I honestly didn't think that there was anybody that was like me. I felt like I was completely unlikable. I felt like I didn't fit in anywhere, I didn't feel like a guy. I didn't play sports, I didn't watch sports, I didn't do guy things, I didn't play cards. I didn't feel like a girl either, for that matter. I felt like an alien or something. I felt like I didn't belong. I felt like I was really out of place. Um, and I just felt like a big, freak, that something was really wrong with me. And I started to really lose hope during this time. Um, I drank a lot, during this time. I didn't have cable TV. I didn't have a computer. I think the internet had started to exist by then for some people, but it was just in its little baby stages, and I didn't have any access to it. Um, I felt like I had no resources. I had nowhere to go and nothing to do. Um, I would go to a bar that played alternative music, for a while. Like on Tuesdays or something, they would play alternative music, and hoping to, meet somebody. And I have to tell you, there was one day where, I was sitting there or standing there. I can't quite remember, when this girl who was drunk or something, like, crashed into me. She turned around and, you know, put her hands on me, and was like, oh, I'm sorry and stuff. And can you guess what I did? I did absolutely positively nothing. I didn't move. I didn't look at her. I didn't say anything. I froze like a deer, in headlights. Um, and I realized after that happened that I was just screwed. At least that was my perception. That a girl could literally fall on my lap, and I, you know, wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Um, in a way, in my mind, it was just as well, because, I really felt unlikable. I felt like, if I did get into a relationship with a girl, it would be doomed, because they would be frustrated with me, and they would be disappointed, and once they found out, kind of who I really was, that it would be over. Um, anyway, now that I don't have my glasses on, I can barely see the clock. I think I'm running out of time though. I think I'm gonna have to put on. I'm gonna finish up a little bit here, and I think I'm gonna have to continue in the third video briefly. Um, anyway, during this time, I was really, really depressed. I drank a lot. My apartment was a big filthy mess. I was a big filthy mess. It was terrible. I really started to lose hope. Really started to think that there was something wrong with me, something fundamentally wrong with me, and was upset about it. Um, I felt like, I was insane in some way. There was broken in my head. Um, and I really thought about suicide during this time quite a lot. But when I thought about it in a very serious way, I realized that there was a glimmer of hope in there somewhere, and I could never do anything so absolute as suicide. If there was even the tiniest shard of hope somehow. And I took that shard of hope and I said, well, I've got to do something. I've got to try something. I can't